Hi, Annie.
Hi.
Hey, and welcome, Steve.
Nice to be here.
Great to
Thank
have you
you.
here.
Sure.
So, here with us today is Stephen Grasse. He is the founder of Quaker City Mercantile, QCM, the former company known as Gyro, and he is the owner of Tamworth Distilling. Steve spent over 2 decades in the world of commercial advertising before dedicating his career to working only with brands he can get behind or create himself. In addition, he's the author of a book called Brand Mysticism, which I had the great joy of reading recently, both to and from my retreat in upstate New York. And I'm really looking forward to learning more about your journey, Steve, and it's a real honor to have you here with us today.
Great. Yeah. Nice to
Welcome.
be here.
So I know we were speaking briefly before we hit record, but as I was getting ready for this podcast, I was having a hard time sort of wrapping my head around the fact that it's been close to 30 years
Yes.
since I first met you.
Yes.
And that's when you had Gyro, which was
Oh,
in,
wow. It will be 30 years because you worked for me in 1995.
yeah,
And so
yeah.
that literally is 30 years ago.
Which is
Wow.
impossible because she would have been 5 years
I
older.
know.
Now
I
it's weird.
know. I know. It's
It,
really funny.
yeah, so I was that, well, I guess I'll step back a bit. So at the time, my then aunt, my uncle's former wife, was working for J. Walter Thompson. She was an ad exec in New York City.
Ah.
And I had been studying, I was always, for as long as I can remember, I was planning to become an obstetrician. I wanted to be a
hmm
doctor. And I was up at Penn, and after the first year, it wasn't, I found it wasn't for me. So I loved, I loved advertising and I loved photography, and I switched gears to communications. So my aunt, who was had long been in the advertising industry, said she sent me an envelope. There was minimal writing,
Mm.
picture of you from the New York Times, and like looked like a bunch of kids just having fun along a
Yeah.
wall, or like a scene.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
And she said, Court, she said, this is the next hottest thing. Like this is
Mm.
this is where you want to go.
Yeah.
So
Oh, I
I
know exactly when that was then because we had a nice big profile in the New York Times about us, and that's the article. And that's wow, very
I I was looking everywhere. I save everything, and I'm sure somewhere my parents moved from the house I grew up in, and I found a bunch of letters, but I'm sure I have it somewhere. But
Hmm.
yeah, it was very cute. And so I didn't have a car when I was up at Penn, which for listeners who aren't familiar with the city, it's in West Philly, and then Society Hill is down in the lower numbers of the
East
city.
Philly, East Philly.
East Philly, okay,
Yeah,
East. So I had rollerblades. So I
yes,
rollerbladed all over the city. I became known by you and my colleagues at Gyro as Roller Girl, but
yes,
came rolling in for my interview, and I guess the rest is pretty much history. But I worked there
yes.
all throughout college, and I think even like after graduating, I think I was there for a decent chunk of time.
Yeah, you were with us for a while, and you were always just there.
I was just there.
And yeah, no, and it was great. You were a bright presence, and then I've kept in touch with you over the years. I mean, with various projects you were
Yeah.
working on. Yeah, so
Yeah, so I contemplating going elsewhere from law to do something. I've always had a creative outlet that I've
yeah.
wanted to pursue. So you've been a great source of that. I did find this though. I still have stationery.
Hey,
I have
yeah.
stationery
You
from
notice? Is
Gyro.
that the one? That's the one that says we had an office in the Vatican City, right?
This one says Gyro Worldwide. Yes, now in Philadelphia, France, India, Vatican City. Yes,
Yes. And
and it
we
has.
always used to have people asking if we really had an office in Vatican City.
Yeah, I just
Do you
realized.
also remember we used to have stationery? We used to change the stationery all the time. And one iteration of it was all of these monkeys that we drew really long ass hairs coming out. And it was just really weird. And I just feel like that whole period, I can't believe we made money because all we did was punk our clients.
Well,
15-year-old sons and 14-year-old sons and 17-year-old sons were our target listeners. They would be hysterical right now.
Yeah. It was a lot of fun. We had a lot of fun.
I think that's what made you, I mean, of the many facets, I think that's one of the big ones that made you so unique in how you got the attention of many.
Yeah,
And
it's how we got work. It's how we got work outside of Philadelphia because most of the agencies in Philly are, you know, very mundane, very local, and we had higher aspirations. So we tried to get clients all over the world, and you do that by being different. So we were very kind of punk rock about it. I wrote the book Brand Mysticism because my son, who is 19
oh my gosh.
and living in Bali right now, but he kept during COVID, he kept asking me about how like my career and what I did. And I said, I'm going to write a book about this. So Brand Mysticism was my COVID project. And luckily we found a good publisher for it. So Running Press is part of Hachette, which is the French conglomerate. So it was a great book.
And Aaron Goldberg, who
Aaron
you
Goldfarb is
or sorry, Goldfarb.
Goldfarb.
Yeah.
He's like a really big deal in the spirits journalism world. So he's got a bunch of best-selling books, and he was my collaborator on this book. So for a 1 hour a week during COVID, every week he would call and he would interview me we'd go over stories, and then he would write a paragraph. He'd write a chapter, send it to me, and we'd go back and forth until it was written. So
it was awesome to read because it was from a large part of it was from when I was working at Gyro, but I wasn't quite, I saw a lot behind the scenes, but I didn't really understand all of the inner workings and what you were doing like outside of the headquarters and then what took place after I left. But one of the reasons I left is I went to pursue a gig in photography, and I found, speaking of photography,
that photo
from Philly
that was
Magazine.
Philly Mag. Yeah. Isn't that fun?
So all these great findings.
I remember when you shot that. From that era, the Bikini Bandits.
Yes.
We were one of the so the funny thing is, if you ever read the book, so we did work for the tobacco industry. So we did RJ Reynolds tobacco. Before the FDA got involved, it was a lot of fun. It was like being a pirate, right? So there was all this money floating around, and we would do like $1 million photo shoots, and it was just tons of fun in a very I don't know, decadent way. But we took our tobacco money and we funneled it into three projects. One was Sailor Jerry, which became it became the fastest growing rum brand in the world, and we sold that.
That's where, if I would have stuck around, that's where you wanted, or that's where you had suggested I go with Larry.
With Larry,
Shyamala at the time.
Yeah. And then Bikini Bandits was a film series we started.
Yeah.
And it was, very successful for the time, early days of the internet. Like I got signed to United Talent Agency in Hollywood. It was a big deal. And then it just died, as all things in Hollywood do. But during COVID, my other COVID project was I sent Bikini Bandits to a friend of mine in Hollywood. And I said, I think we should do a documentary about this. And he said, let me send it to my, to a friend of mine who works for Danny McBride, the actor who does, Righteous Gemstones, and he's Bound and Down. And Danny McBride optioned it. And so in first week of December, we're going to Slovenia to shoot Bikini Bandits in King Arthur's court. Time travel. It's a documentary about us trying to make this time travel movie in Slovenia. So we're shooting the trailer for it. So it's one of the lessons from my book. I'm not sure it's in the book, but it's one of the lessons that I have is don't let anything you create die. Keep it, every idea you have, you should write it down. Keep it journal, keep all your ideas, because you never know when something will work out. So this is 25 years later is when we made Bikini Bandits. And 25 years later to the year, it's something's happening with it finally. So it's
That's
fun.
exciting. That's
Yeah.
not in your book. I mean, I remember Bikini Bandits. Annie, if you Google Bikini Bandits, you'll get a glimpse and you'll have a quick understanding of what it was.
Yeah. And the
what it
girl,
is.
the lead girl, Heather, she's going with me to Slovenia to shoot this. And it's funny. I mean, the whole thing, and Joe Franz, who was our original producer. So it's part of the story is for I just turned 60, my 60th birthday. I am going, it's part of the story is I called old friends from 25 years ago and asked, do you want to make this film? And that's the hard part of the story. So it's old friends reuniting to make stupid things.
I love this, but this just goes to show, it goes back to your whole, we'll get to this, the onion method with all the layers and a deep backstory. So your work is basically, I feel, living proof of what you do for the clients, like what you do with anything you put your hands on. So that's so cool. Was it Corey Feldman?
Corey Feldman.
Does he have any involvement in this one?
Not yet. We might drag him into it, but I'm not sure how people feel about Corey Feldman these days. So we'll see.
I don't think they've thought about him for quite some time.
No, I mean,
your child of the '80s loved Corey Feldman, and
in the movie,
Corey Haim too.
Corey, well, you know, it's funny when we made the Bikini Bandits experience. It's the feature-length Bikini Bandit film that came out. We had Corey Feldman and Corey Haim signed, but Corey Haim died before we started shooting.
Oh.
We had Hank the Angry Drunken Dwarf from Howard Stern, and Hank died right after we shot.
Oh no.
And then
kiss of death.
We had Dee Ramone for the Ramones, and he wrote the Bikini Bandits theme song, which is excellent. But Dee died just after the film came out. So
that's three, no more.
The curse of the Bikini Bandits.
Yeah. I'd be scared to work on the episode or whatever you have the sequel going on now.
Yeah.
All right, so we talked a little bit about my background and gave listeners a bit about Gyro. I want to take listeners into your background, almost to the point, the age that you were when I was starting at Gyro, 18 or 19 years old, because I think that at 18 or 19, you talk about this gap year that you took after high school. And I think that was a really significant time in your life that helped to shape all that you've created. And
absolutely.
I think the way you describe it is you were devouring books.
Yes.
Voracious reader. And then this really resonates with me. And then the reason why I go on retreat and strive to be as Buddha-esque as you are, but you talk about time alone, that there's so much value in time alone. So can you tell us a bit about the gap year you took when you went to Thailand?
Yeah, well, I went as a foreign exchange student with the Rotary clubs. I wasn't a good student, by the way. Like, you know, my combined SAT score was like 800 or something like that.
Just to show you how important SAT scores are.
Well, I mean, I was my guidance counselor in high school said, you know, people like you go to community college. So
you called them out. You call them out in your book.
I know.
I love that.
I did. Yeah.
Good. I'm so glad you did that.
Yeah. But I mean, so when I said I wanted to be
like you.
When I said I wanted to be an exchange student, they also said people like you don't get chosen. So I said,
I just want
well,
to interject for 1 second.
yeah.
I don't want anyone to think that I think community college is below or
No,
bad,
no.
anything like that. But it was still wrong of that person to say that.
Totally, totally. But I mean, point was, uh, I didn't have the credentials. I didn't have the profile. But I said, fuck that. Sorry, bleep that. I'm gonna sign.
As far as I'm concerned, you don't have to believe it.
I'm gonna sign up for it anyway. And so I got chosen to go to. It's funny. At first, I was supposed to go to Bolivia, and spent all my time learning about Bolivia. And then, literally a week before I went, they said, "Oh, you're now going to Thailand." And when I went, I stayed on the Cambodian border in a province called Chanthaburi. It's about 400 miles from Bangkok. And this is 1982. And the Khmer Rouge were still fighting the Vietnamese on the border. And I remember, like, during the day, it'd be thunder all day. I'm like, why is there thunder? And they said, oh, that's not thunder. Those are mortar shells. And they said, also, they told me, don't drive your motorcycle into the jungle because the Khmer Rouge are capturing people and draining them of their blood because they need it for the battlefield. So it was like kind of crazy. So anyway, I went there.
Ignorance is sometimes good.
Well, it's funny because my parents said, well, he's with the Rotary Club. They know what they're doing. Like, no, I had no supervision. They put me in the all-girls school. And I'm like, why? And they said, so you have something nice to look at. And I'm like, oh my God. So anyway, I was the only they call it Westerner. They call him Farang. I was the only Westerner in the entire province, and everybody knew who I was Steve, Mr. Steve. And I went to school every day, and I learned I can speak Thai really well, but I can't read or write it. But I mean, yeah, I spent a lot of time alone, right? And it was the first time in my life I had done that. And my mom would send me all these books, and there was no television, there was, but I couldn't understand it. So I spent all of my time reading, and I got to know a lot of locals and had a lot of great experiences that way. But it was the first time I had actually spent time alone. First time I had actually thought about how the world works, and I used to go to Bangkok, on occasion as a treat, and I would marvel that everyone seemed to think that I knew what I was doing because I was American.
Mhm.
And I thought, this is really interesting. I could come back here and totally get a really good job because people think I somehow know what I'm doing.
Mhm.
And that's what I ended up doing. So, it's funny, my son is 19 and
I forget, is he the baby or is your daughter older?
my daughter's older. She's 24, 23.
Okay.
Sorry, and my son's 19.
Yeah.
But he went to his first year of college. It's Savannah College of Art and Design. And he said, you know what? I'm going to do a gap year. So he saved up all of his money by himself and flew to the Philippines, lived in Siargao, which is a surfing colony. And now he's in Bali for 2 months. And then he's going to Thailand, Laos, Cambodia. And then he's going to end his trip by working for my brother in Tokyo. My brother lives in Tokyo. He owns a film production company.
Is that the same brother? Because you have another brother, right?
My older brother runs my distillery in New Hampshire, and my younger brother Pete lives in Tokyo.
Pete is the brother who, when you were stuck on the runway, is he the brother that you guys came up with the Bikini Bandits idea? Okay.
Yes.
All right.
Yeah.
Sorry, I cut you off, but I'm just
That's
trying
all right.
to
It's
figure
all
out
right. But I mean, my son is very inspired by my journey, and he's doing a similar thing. Although it's funny because we talk a lot on the it's also when I went to Thailand, you couldn't call, and I have tons of letters I wrote to my mom and stuff like that. But he calls us once in a while, and it's just amazing how the world's changed.
Yeah.
in that
You
time
could
because
FaceTime. I mean, you could FaceTime each other
yeah,
too, right?
yeah.
Yeah. But you couldn't
But
do.
when I went, it was like very different world. In some ways, it was safer then. In some ways, it's safer now. I mean, it's like it's different, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
That's so cool. That's so
yeah.
cool. So when he comes back, does he have well, he's going to come back and work with your brother. Is there?
He's got to work with my brother in film. I think he's very inspired to be an entrepreneur. I don't think he quite knows what that means yet. He's really talented as a designer,
Yeah.
graphic designer, but I think he doesn't want to pursue that.
He's
So
got the creative gene.
he really does because my wife Sonia's she went to Tyler and she's for art and she designs all of our interior spaces and she's super talented, but so it runs in the family. But I don't know.
Very cool. Well,
But
congrats.
what I was going to get at with
Yes.
the also in this year in Thailand is figuring out for me creativity and spirituality are the same thing. The reason we're on the planet is to create.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the only way you get satisfaction being alive is when you're creating and making things. And everyone I know my age who is miserable, which is almost everyone I know, is not a creative.
I have a job, Steve.
Is-
That's why I have a job.
Well, no, people are not, when they're not, like when you're a creative person, you are entertained in your own mind. You are satisfied. You have a purpose. You have something that you're living for and doing. And I think so many people don't understand that or didn't have a life of doing it. So it's interesting because also as you reach the age of 60, one of the reasons I wanted to keep I sent out the bikini bandit thing during COVID. I was like, I'm not done having adventures. I want to have fun. And to me, that's fun. That's much more fun than owning a boat or something like that. You know what I mean?
Could be
Well,
fun for others and fulfilling for others, right?
Yeah, I guess.
I guess you're creating, like my dad is a big fisherman, right? That is
Yeah.
his solace. That
Yeah,
is
that's his art. That's his
That's
creativity.
his right. That's
Yeah.
his, what makes him feel good. That's his
Yeah.
fulfillment. One of the things, right? So I guess you're creating a beautiful day. You're right from what you're saying. I'm trying to see how that relates. Like,
Well,
you
I
don't
mean, there's a
have
couple
to-
points in the book I make. I think creativity is the purpose or the reason. I also think it's interesting that my life is driven by aesthetic choices,
Mhm.
and I do not think that good taste is subjective. I think it's a science and an art, and the more educated you are, the more you understand that.
So there's a value that has to do with aesthetics and
Yeah.
beauty. Right?
Yes.
There's a core value. I do a lot of core values in my coaching work.
Yeah.
And that is actually one of them. That's something that you seem to feel is one of your values. That's in your soul, right?
Yes.
That aesthetics and beauty. And to some people go through life and they don't notice that stuff. And that's okay. It's just that you feel like
but is it okay? Is it
well,
really
I mean,
okay?
listen, I can't judge what other people do. Their life is fulfilled by, whatever it is that makes them happy. That's important to you. That's important to you. And you happen to feel that aesthetics are a very important part of life.
Absolutely.
It fills your soul.
Yep.
There are some qualities where you touch upon them in your book, and I'm like, Steve, literally, it's like mindfulness encapsulated in this book. But you talk about, like, in addition to that creativity and stimulating the mind, you talk about deep thinking, boundless curiosity.
Yeah.
And almost as if you refer to it as your third eye and how it can increase your perception. That really landed pretty hard for me. And that you also, another attitude that we talk about a lot with mindfulness is letting go of the attachment to outcomes. So getting back to, like, you're saying you're having fun. I love how, like, when you were gearing up to build and launch Tamworth Distilling, you talk about your attitude in the business being key, which I think it's not only in business, I think it's just life in general, but how you can't be too attached to outcome. Like if it makes money, great.
Well,
And
it
if,
will if the intent is pure. And what I mean by pure is like if you're doing it because let's just do it and see what happens, right? Chances are it's going to work out because you're not doing it. I mean, I find the more crazy I am with shit, the more it makes money.
and you're driven by what you think is
Yeah, yeah.
good. You don't follow mainstream. You're not doing things to please others. Like I think that's why you are so.
I'm totally driven by, I just want to do cool shit. I want to make like life short, do cool shit.
That's a great ad slogan right there.
Yeah, don't get bogged down with what people
T-shirt.
want or think. Don't own too much shit. Just
Well, what you're doing, Steve, is I think like part of my framework is allow, right? You're just allowing. You're allowing things to be what they are. It's not it's not holding on to the outcome. It's just, I just want to do stuff that I think is cool. And
yeah, okay. But I think the problem that most people have is they don't know what they think is cool, or they don't know why they want
think
to
it's
do
cool.
something.
Okay, what,
And
so what is
what
their
I'm saying
purpose
is
and their,
you must really be a curious person and understand what you have to think about. You have to have time alone to think about this. Like, why am I here? What am I doing? What's important to me? And um, I think most people are not interesting because they're never interested.
so funny. I just want to tie this in real quick. So whenever I'm talking to my clients, you bring up a really important, you guys have both said this several times about curiosity. First of all, one of my rules in life is the more curious you are, the smarter you are, because that's just what I think. And I tell my kids that, who, teenagers these days, they barely look up to ask questions, right? So, but that's one part. The B part is whenever I talk to clients, a lot of them work in corporate and in healthcare and they're executive level, and they're people in general, not just my clients, but they go into something and they sit, they're mad or they're angry or they assume or they tell a story, whatever. But if you enter a situation with curiosity, it will always come across different, right? Like instead of, how do I explain it? Instead of just saying, well, Steve, what do you mean? It's like, tell me more about that. Explain to me where you're coming from. That's a very small example, but in a meeting, people get, or in relationships, they get so angry because they want it to be seen their way. But it's like, help me understand where you're coming from is a curiosity, right?
Absolutely.
And that helps you understand life better, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's interesting though, because I think like I'm a history nerd. I really go deep into things. I mean, I read like a book a week. I'm just about finished the Gulag Archipelago by Alexander Solzhenitsyn, which is this insanely in-depth book about the Soviet penal system in the 19 from the revolution up to 1973 when it came out, and it's like it's an insane amount of knowledge, and I'm like, why am I don't know how I'll use it yet, but I whenever I learn, I figure out how to use it in some way. Like
How did
it's
you?
funny.
Sorry.
Well, go ahead.
No. I want to hear what you're. Then I'll ask.
I was gonna say, like, I just I spent this summer. I read the Once and Future King by T.H. White, which was a very famous, where the Sword and the Stone came from. It's a King Arthur legend. And then I read Mark Twain's 1889 A Connecticut Yankee in King Arthur's Court, which was a great riff off that. And then I listened to 48-hour lecture on King Arthur, and then an equally long lecture on the Black Death. And I took all of that knowledge and I applied it to my Bikini Bandits in King Arthur's Court script. And I'm making it as true to the legend as possible because that's funny to me, right? But it's like nerding out and geeking out on the history stuff I find really interesting. I feel like, I mean, one of the big message of the book is turn off the damn phone, stop the computer, take out old-fashioned books and read them. And if you don't know what you're interested in, that's a good place to start. Just
Mhm.
start with that, because I also feel like it's really good to be bored,
Yes.
you know?
I say that to my
Yeah,
cat. We've spoken about this on
We
other
don't know how to
episodes.
be bored anymore.
They,
yeah,
they like the minute they're bored, they reach for
for the
an
phone.
iPad or a phone,
Yeah, yeah,
turn on TV, and I know they hate me for it, but I'm always like, what does it feel like to be
mm,
bored? Like, how does it feel in the body? What are you telling yourself? And we can
yeah.
really learn a lot about ourselves and all the preferences we have,
Well,
and
that's
get
when you
curious.
go back into your own thoughts and you actually cycle through them, as opposed to, getting that dopamine hit from your phone. So
Yeah.
we, at our farm in New Hampshire, which we've taken our kids out when we sold Sailor Jerry rum. We bought a farm in New Hampshire, and
Hmm.
then we bought the rest of the village, most of the buildings
Yeah.
for the distillery. But the farm, we have no internet.
Hmm.
We have a DVD player, and we have 500 DVDs. And what's great when you're there, my phone barely, my phone works enough that I can conduct business for the 2 months a year that we're up there.
Yeah.
But I love that because it takes forever to download anything, like even files from the office. So
Yeah.
you can't download a movie of any kind. So you just have to watch the Hollywood classics, as the kids have cycled through now several times, you know?
You're forced, like I get the sense from who you are and the path you've been on, that you enjoy unplugging. Your creativity is fueled by
Yeah,
disconnecting from TikTok and
yeah, yeah,
Instagram, and you dive in deep, and that insight that you get, and the more esoteric books that you read, like
yeah.
that's what you weave into what you create, and in
Absolutely.
turn
That
it's
becomes the source. So if the more everyone, okay, our work looks different than everyone else's because our sources of inspiration are different from everyone else's. Whereas
Right.
most people riff off what they see on Twitter or
Yeah, yeah,
Instagram, and that's why everyone's design and stuff looks, there's trends in design, whereas our stuff is from a completely different place
yeah.
because the source material is from weird books I read that you know. Also, I've been working on another book. It's called Conjuring Creativity.
What is it called?
Conjuring Creativity.
Conjuring. Okay.
Okay, and what it's about is how we don't know where creativity comes from. It actually comes from the ether. And I go through in chapters, and we talk about various famous people over time that have said that creativity is a mystical thing that you have to meditate on and pull from strange sources. So we talk about Sir Isaac Newton, talk about Carl Jung, we talk about Wolfgang Pauli, who is the father of quantum mechanics.
Mhm.
Um, and there's a great quote when Bob Dylan was on 60 Minutes decade ago or something, and they asked him, um, he said, I didn't write those songs, those early songs. He goes, I didn't write them. They were channeled through me.
Mm.
And the point is, if in the book we say clearly, we have all these exercises to do. And we say, do they work? And say it doesn't matter if it works. What matters is you are consciously unplugging from everything else. And you're focusing, like I think it was Edison who used to get his best ideas staring into the fire. And he said the ideas would dance and they would literally jump out of the fire into his brain. And that's the point, is that you're focusing and you're channeling and you're meditating by just emptying your mind. And the ether, I mean, the idea that there's ideas can be pulled from another plane, I think that's kind of true, because the ideas kind of tend to come fully formed, right?
Yeah, and I would say, I mean, what you're saying pretty much is what mindfulness is about, where it's stepping out of doing and noticing when we're distracted and allowing ourselves to just be. One thing I would say is I think you said something to the effect of like getting rid of your thoughts or
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
not so much getting rid of thoughts as much as observing them, understanding them, and being able to see how caught up in our thoughts as opposed to just letting ourselves drop in and be here. And I think it becomes almost effortless, that creativity, when you rest in non-doing, which to some people looks like you're doing absolutely nothing.
Yeah.
But that's where the juices crank up. That's
Yeah.
where you get these ideas that
Yeah.
otherwise, when you're in autopilot, they just slip on by. So I think intuitively, your regimen and your practices, they align with what mindfulness is about. But again, I love that it's this idea that we don't have to work so hard. Like it comes to us. It just reveals
Does,
itself.
but you have to the point too is like, yeah, this is pretty much all I do though, right? So I'm not antisocial. Luckily, my wife is a social being because if she wasn't, I would never see anyone, right? She pulls
She go
me
to
out.
bed really early too.
Yeah, well, what was that?
Does she go to bed early? Like,
Ha!
Does
Uh,
she practice segmented sleep like you?
y- I think she does now. It's funny
Yeah,
because I go upstairs at like 3 in the morning and I read and then I go back to sleep.
yeah.
Um, but sometimes it's funny too. Like I don't have my phone anywhere near the bedroom, right?
Smart.
So when I don't sleep, I literally lie there. But I have no problem sleeping. I sleep actually really well. I just wake up in the middle of the night, read a book, and go back to sleep.
Yeah.
The other big part of my day is walking. I mean, I walk
Yes,
usually about at least 10 miles a day,
I
and
read that.
I just
such a
walk.
mild, it's such a mindful thing to do.
Yeah,
I have a,
well, and
If you make it that way.
yeah, yeah, and it's like I just think, and I do listen to music because otherwise I'm hearing, Philly traffic and sirens. But I think it's just, the other thing I'll say too is, okay, so it's lots of thinking, lots of mindful, whatever, doing nothing. But it's also I make quick decisions, and I make them all day long, and I have 20 projects going on at once, and I keep them all going, and I keep them all straight in my mind because I think the best. I just finished a big, massive book on Ulysses S. Grant, and in the book, I read a lot of military strategy books, but
mhm.
he said, in on the battlefield, indecision is death, and it's best to make quick decisions. And if you made the wrong one, make another one very quickly. And I've been trying to teach my kids that because they're always worried: are they making the right decision? Are they doing the right thing? I'm like,
Really hard to make a quick decision. You make it quickly because you create such space to make it quickly, right? Like the
right,
reason you can't make a quick decision is because you're so filled with so much. And you're saying when I create that space and that gap, right,
yes,
that I
yes,
can
but
make decisions.
also I have so many projects going on at once. Yeah, most of them will fail. It doesn't matter. Next, next, next. Keep going. Like try that, try that. Oh, that didn't work. Kill it. Move on to the next thing. And it's like that
Of
quick
regret.
well, and it's like fail quickly, fail often, fail all the time.
Yeah,
And then the things that do work, just keep at it. Oh, that worked. Keep going.
yeah.
And you'll
Celebrate.
notice over time, it's like, oh, holy shit, you've built an empire. How did that happen? Well,
Mhm.
I'm relentless. I don't give up, and I just keep going. So, but yeah, okay. So we have like a few minutes left. Okay.
Yeah, I know. Your team told me 1:45 hard stop, so I'm
I
gonna.
can do a few more minutes. So the
Okay.
thing is too, so my wife Sonia does all of this, like she's into the woo-woo hippie stuff, right?
Yeah.
When we first got together, I was like, all right, yeah, okay. I try all of it. And other than so we do the uh sonic tuning, the tuning forks.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. I couldn't tell. You told me about this. I couldn't tell if you were joking, if you
Oh
were
no, no, I
legit.
do it. I do it extensively twice a
Okay.
day.
And the special water too, you were telling me you drink? Is that too?
Yeah, the structured water.
Okay, all right.
Structured
And
water?
structured water is look it up. It's really interesting. So the way water molecules work, if the water is active and in motion, it's our bodies absorb it much differently. So like when water is going through a river or whatever, and it's also like, so we have all these crazy water jugs in the house with mandalas at the bottom of them, and we
Yeah.
have all our piping at the house has been totally worked, so it's structured water when it comes out. So we do the sonic tuning, we do the structured water. We also do muscle activation therapy, which I think was initially developed for the NFL, but it's like this weird thing if like muscle, like if my neck hurts, it might be in my foot. And I see this dude once a week.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
But I'm telling you, I'm 60 years old. I'm in perfect health. Okay. And it's all because of her hippie shit. And it's great.
Steve, are you going to levitate up as we end this episode? Are you going to levitate away with all this energy you're channeling from the
No.
water and the tuning? What this is?
So in New Hampshire, we're building. So we have the distillery. We just bought another 112 acres there to build these massive barrel houses, right? So it's quite an amazing thing that we're up to, and that's I'm gonna leave my kids all that. So anyway,
Can I ask you one last question? Because your book ends, at the end of your book, you talk about that, you were really at that time, your latest obsession was France, and you were reading the book
the perfume.
Yes, you got inspired. You were reading the 790-page book by Andrew Roberts, Napoleon of Life, and you said
Oh,
it
yeah.
gave you an idea to make a perfume that you spray on food. And right as the book was getting ready to roll out, you said that you were about to launch this rose perfume of gin. So I'm just want to.
Oh, yeah, it came out.
What's
Yeah.
going on with that? Yeah, worth trying.
It came out. It sold out already. Yeah,
Yeah.
sold
Okay.
out very quickly. We should be
Very
having another version of that coming out in the next 6 months or so. Yeah. So
Very-
that's the thing too. Like we come up with shit, we do it, right? So hey, it's funny that Napoleon book. I just finished that. You know who loved my book?
Who?
The rapper Jack Harlow.
Yeah, no way. I love his music.
It's funny because he I don't know who he was, but he texted me when it first came out, and he's like, he DM'd me on Instagram. He goes, "Love the way your brain works, man." And I said, "Who is this?" I looked it up, and it had like 8 million followers or something. I'm like, I went up, told my son, I said, "Hey, do you know who Jack Harlow is?" And he goes, "Yeah, of course."
Yeah.
I said, "He just DM'd me." And he goes, "What? No way."
I want
So,
my dad to get DM'd by Jack Harlow.
but when me and Jack talked, he was asking me about all these self-help books to read. And I
Yeah.
said, "Dude," I said, "if you want to be a great man, read books about great men."
Mm.
And I said, "You should read
Perfect.
Napoleon." So he read the entire Napoleon book, and then he called me and we talked about it for a half hour.
No way. You have a one-on-one book club with Jack Harlow.
I know. Isn't that funny? Isn't that
That's
funny?
so cool.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we're at 150. The powers that be on your end said hard
Yeah.
stop. So, Steve, this has been awesome. It's a
Yeah.
blast from the past, but I'm excited. I foresee all of your great work just sort of going on and on and on for many years to come. So I'm
Well,
looking
thank
forward
you.
to
Thank
that.
you, roller girl.
Yes. Hey, if you want a
Thank
roller
you.
girl, I can make a debut in the Bikini Bandits with my rollerblades on. I can whip through
Hey,
that
if you
out
can get to Slovenia, get there.
on it.
All right. Bye.
Bye. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye. Nice to meet you. Bye.
Nice to meet you too.